we have, of course, designed a charter for our community of practice where we will take you through what are the plans and ambitions for our community of practice in the coming months. Of course, this is going to be a 1 year thing, but the charter is just the first 6 months. The second thing which we're going to be doing is hearing from some amazing experts that we've got here from all parts of the world on some best practices on meaningful youth engagement, because we thought that's probably the best topic to kick us off with, because the main theme of this community of practice is youth engagement. And then, of course, towards the end, we are going to take you through the plan for the next community of practice. We've got some exciting plans for the next community of practice in March that we'd like to discuss with you as well. Um, Next slide. So just as a quick background, I thought because a lot of you did join the kickoff meeting in December, whereas some of you are new here. So just to take you through what is YP2LE and what is Positive Youth Development. So YP2LE is a project funded by the USAID. It's a broader learning network. So it stands for YouthPower 2 Learning and Evaluation Network, and it's in continuation of the first YPLE, which some of you may have heard of and may have been a part of. It's a project which is aimed at bringing different people together, working to advance positive youth development. Positive youth development is an approach which is premised on four major themes. So it's defined as an approach where young people should have the assets, skills, financial assets, the ability to leverage those as assets through agency, and to be able to contribute to positive change for themselves, but also their communities. And last but not the least is being surrounded by an enabling environment that supports them, whether it is community or government or their parents. And this network, YP2LE, is a reflection of this approach. Um, and also just wanted to let everyone know that this this call is being recorded because we would of course like to share with the wider audience who may not have been able to join today because of time differences or other reasons. So I hope that's fine with everyone. Um, yeah, and the next slide. Yeah, and now I'll hand over to Bilkis to take us through the Community of Practice Charter.
Thank you, Apoorv. So as you guys know, we have a charter, which is basically, a document that will set the expectations, what we want to do in the future, and be a reference for all of us here in the COP to go back to whenever we want. We have this slide here because we wanted to tell you, first of all, we'll have the link of the charter for you in the chat. And we also posted it on our platform, YouthPower, under our COP. We've created that thread that you're seeing that says feedback on the COP charter because we want you to take a look at it and post in the comments what your feedback is. When we really want to hear from you, as you know, this is a members-driven community of practice, which means really everything that we do here is inspired by you, and everything that we're going to do in the future also something that is going to meet your needs and anything you'd like us to do together. So please, after our call, take all the time that you need and then refer back to the thread that Apoorv created to tell us what you think of this charter and flag if there is anything you'd like to change or add in there. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. This one is a reminder for everyone who's joined our call last time and who's also new here. We wanted to tell you again what is a community of practice, and as you know and see on the screen, it is a space for youth and youth serving practitioners to come together to share ideas, tools, build and test practical resources. All that to work on advancing positive youth development. And so this is really, again, a platform that is created for you, where although, Apoorv and I are just facilitators in here, we're just going really to listen to what you want. And so it is very important that we get your input and your feedback. And to be honest, we cannot advance in anything that we do if we don't hear from you guys, because we don't want the right to take over. We're just here as mere facilitators, and this is a space for all of you to put your thoughts and your needs and work on anything that you want us to work on. Again, the charter is just a guide and the reference tool for everyone. So it will always be there and you can always, I think you can download it, right, Apurv? After you give us your feedback and hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably revise it and we'll have a final copy that we can share with all of you that you can download and keep referring back to in the future. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. All right, what are our goals? These are some of the things that we have in mind, and you're very welcome to add to it. On YouthPower under our COP, even if you feel like we should add to a different goal, or even on the charter itself, if you want to make a comment, you can always tell us. This is something we thought of, but again, we're open to all of your ideas and your suggestions in the future. So we want to collect, disseminate, customize, and develop new positive youth development resources. We are aiming to host an event once every month. So that would be a total of 12 events in 12 months. We're also hoping to have at least 150 people signed up for our COP for the next 6 months. Hopefully, at least 50 female and 50 from the global south. And we're going to post at least weekly in the online discussion group, sharing resources with you or any updates or news that we have. So moving on to the next slide. Our activities and deliverables. Again, this is something Apurv and I thought of. If you want to add to it, you can definitely let us know, even in the chat. And we're going to have a Padlet activity at the end as well, where you can put all of your ideas. We're going to include we'll try to include 4 knowledge sharing webinars. Also, we're going to have joint webinars with other COPs. We're going to have one next month, actually in March, with the gender COP. So stay tuned to that. That should be very exciting. We're going to try to share, regularly resources, opportunities, reports, anything to keep it a vibrant space, and also anything that can help you in your academic and professional life. So moving on to the next slide. Again, this is a work plan, and these are things Apurv and I thought of. These, by the way, are, we thought about these as a conclusion, or we took them out of the Padlet activity that we had last time. If you remember, last time in our kickoff call, we had a Padlet where we had an activity where you guys were able to add your ideas and what you expect to see and what you want to see in the COP. And so we went over all of your comments, and this is what we came up with up until June. But like I said, this is members driven. And so if you guys feel like this is not something that you are interested in, or maybe you want to shift it to edit one theme or another theme or add to it, completely feel free to reach out to us and let us know. So for March, we're going to celebrate International Women's Day, and that will be a joint event with the Gender COP. In April, we thought about having maybe a workshop or webinar about best practices on delivering training to young people in difficult contexts like conflict, media, dark communities, remote parts of the world, etc. In May, we wanted to think about maybe bringing a workshop about evaluation tools and methods for youth engagement. And then in June 2021, it will be Pride Month, and so we wanted to be Pride Month special, where we work with youth from LGBT plus communities. But like I said, this is just like a rough draft. Like honestly, it is up to you, and so feel free to let us know in the comments here or on our YouthPower platform under our COP whether you think this is something interesting or maybe you want to add to it. And another thing also Apurv and I thought of, if you guys happen to work in any of these fields, or you're interested or you have significant experience, we'd love to hear from you, and you can even lead one of these sessions. And so this is not, it is the work that we're doing here, and these webinars and everything can be led by you. And so you can definitely reach out to us and let us know if you're interested or have one crazy idea you want to implement about how we can tackle this differently and make the most out of it. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Um, so community participation, these are basically some expectations, benefits, and also some things to keep in mind as we move forward. So for you, as an individual, you'll be by joining our COP, you'll be part of a global network of practitioners working on meaningful youth engagement. You'll also be able to share and learn from others on how they are advancing positive youth PYD in different contexts. You'll also get to understand how USAID works and how they are trying to implement these ideas. And it is a platform to become aware of opportunities. So, like we said, part of our work, Apurva and I will be sharing resources with all of you, and you can also actually share resources yourself for your fellow members in the COP if you'd like that. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. The next one is about our community norms. And just to summarize everything on the screen here, which again, you can find in our charter and you can take, your time and read in it. This is a safe space for everyone to share their thoughts. We want you obviously to be respectful. We have zero tolerance for any form of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, anything. We just want it to be a space where you feel safe, you feel like you can share your ideas, you can share resources. It is also a space for everyone to listen and respect and share time appropriately. And even when you guys get to work in small groups, we want those norms to be part of your work. And another important thing before I forget is actually giving credit to individuals and organizations. If you're going to copy their pre-existing work, obviously we don't want that to happen to us, so we don't do it to other people's work. And so if you take anything that is not yours, please make sure that you add who it belongs to and cite their contributions. But all in all, our norms are really about respect, about tolerance, about solidarity, and making sure that this is a space where you can really contribute fruitfully and have also others enjoy that contribution and learn from it. And moving on to the next slide. So just as a reminder again, your role is to contribute to building a common sense of purpose, to share these ideas and resources we talked about, to engage respectfully, to attend these monthly meetings like you're doing now, to participate in COP group discussions, and to also really, whenever Apurva and I post something, it is usually really something we want to hear back from you on. And so please don't leave us talking alone in the platform. We really want your feedback, and everything that we post in there is for you guys. So even if you don't like anything I post or something Apurva posted, you can also flag it and let us know. And so your role mainly is to really be engaged and help us and lead in this to understand more what is positive youth development. And moving on to the next slide. So how to join, I'm sure many of you already did, and Apurva already also posted the link in the chat, but you just have to go to the youthpower.org website, create a profile, and then you go to communities as you see, and then you scroll down to Youth Engagement COP, and that when you click on it, you'll basically be able to join it. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. This is our Youth Engagement COP page. Again, this is where you see the discussion forum. You can see the members, and we'll talk about that also at the end. But this is our main page where we have all the threads where you guys can post anything, and also where you'll see what Apurva and I will be posting in there. So moving on to the next slide. And basically, so this part about YouthPower website and platform functionality, we'll leave it until the end, after our speakers finish. And it's a very important part, so you have to stick until the end. I hope that was really helpful in just reminding you of everything and setting up expectations. As a reminder, we've already created a thread on our COP platform, so you can go there to check our charter, and please add your feedback and your comments. And now I'll give it back to Apurva to introduce our speakers.
Thank you so much for that, Bilkis. That was really good. And I can't stress it enough. Please do register your profile on youthpower.org. It's an amazing platform for all youth serving and youth practitioners to share and learn from each other. It's like a marketplace of resources, some best practices on how to really engage young people in development and also advance positive youth development. So I'm going to now invite our first speaker for the session today, my colleague and a very good friend, Manney. She is our US director and has over 2 decades of experience in positive youth development. And she will take us through some of the best practices on meaningful youth engagement. So Jean, over to you. And if you could please project her slides.
Thanks, Apoorv, and hi everyone. Really glad to be with you all today. So yeah, in talking with Apoorv and Balkis, we thought it would be helpful if I gave just a bit of an overview of some existing frameworks and resources around meaningful youth engagement to get us all on the same page. And then, overall, this then community of practice will see how we want to take things forward and continue to improve on things. So the first tool and framework I wanted to share that some of you may be familiar with is the ladder of participation. This has been around for a long time, but is still useful. And it basically sets out the spectrum of child or youth participation. And the lower rungs on the ladder are not participation, right? They're manipulation or tokenism. And then as you get further up the ladder, it's more meaningful participation. And this can be a helpful tool if you're looking at how you can improve youth engagement or advocate for better youth engagement, to look at where the situation is now on the ladder and what would moving up the ladder look like. So this is why this tool could be a bit helpful. Next slide. Another useful framing is the 3-lens approach. And so this is a way to really try to shift the perspective on working with young people in development and thinking about, just working with young people as beneficiaries to then engaging with youth as partners, and finally supporting young people as leaders in development, and all working together towards effective development. So it's really about shifting that perspective through these different lenses. Next slide. This is the definition of meaningful youth engagement that the YouthPower community of practice developed a few years ago collectively. And I just thought I'd highlight some of the key words here, because I think it really is getting at what we mean and intend. It's inclusive, it's intentional, it's mutually respectful partnership, power is shared, there's respective contributions that are valued, young people's contributions are integrated into design and delivery, and not just programs, but strategies, policies, funding, organizations. And it's about changing power structures and working to have young people being considered as experts in regard to their own needs and priorities, and also about building young people's leadership capacities. This for just a couple more seconds. Oh, great. Nope, that's all right. We can go to the next slide. There's also a global consensus statement on meaningful adolescent and youth engagement, and we can make sure to share the link with everyone because it's a good resource. It was developed by 30 youth-led and youth-serving organizations. It actually utilizes the YouthPower definition that I just shared, and also adds key principles and recommended practical strategies, which I've highlighted here. There's more detail in the actual document, which can be helpful. And that it's also a call to action. It goes beyond just definitions and recommendations, but it's a call to action, and over 300 organizations have made commitments towards it. And there's an annual reporting mechanism for those who have made commitments as a way of holding themselves accountable and making progress. So that's another good resource. Next slide. Building on that, there's also the Global Consensus Statement on Youthled Accountability. And this was also developed with more than 35 partners and a youth reference group. And it builds on the Meaningful Adolescent and Youth Engagement Consensus Statement to then build out an agreed definition of youth-led accountability. And it's really, in addition to that definition, it's similarly a call to action. So it's setting out principles and advocating for the importance of partnering with young people, both in direct and indirect mechanisms of monitoring, evaluation, and accountability, and really advocating for that as an effective method for ensuring that the needs and aspirations of young people are properly addressed in policies and programs. Next slide. So I wanted to highlight a few resources that exist on the youthpower.org website already. There's a youth engagement measurement guide and indicators. So if you're an organization that you want to assess how you're doing on youth engagement, or you're starting to build in new practices, there's some recommended indicators that you could start using and a guide for that. So that's available. There's also a youth engagement training package that was developed a few years ago for USAID staff and implementing partners. And that has different exercises and tools that could be useful for anyone. And one other resource to highlight is a video series that's meant to show both why it's important to engage young people in development and then how to do it, and giving some practical examples. So that's also available. And there's many more resources linked on here as well. These are just a few I'm highlighting. Next slide. So yeah, wanted to just leave with some concluding thoughts, and I always start with it's fundamentally a right of young people to actively and meaningfully engage in matters that affect their lives. And so always starting from that rights-based approach. And meaningful youth engagement also leads to better outcomes for everyone. And so, having those two things in mind when we're advocating for more meaningful youth engagement is useful. And then, where I think we need to get to as a sector is to move from seeing meaningful youth engagement as optional and something that's nice to do if we have the time and the resources, to something that's essential if we're to have effective development and programs. So thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for that, Jean. It was really, really helpful to set a context on meaningful youth engagement. And as some of you may know, but Jean was also part of the first YPLE network. So it's nice to have you set the stage for us. And a lot of you have been asking about where you can get these resources. As I've said again, please go to the youthpower.org website, register your profile, and then join the discussion group on youth engagement. Everything, all these presentations and resources will be posted there, but we obviously need you to register on the website. Our next speaker now is another colleague of mine and a dear friend, Nafisa. Nafisa is Restless Development US office. She's our global gender and advocacy manager. She's an intersectional feminist activist and has been working in the field for over a decade. So Nafisa, I would like to welcome you now to share some of the sort of best practices from your work with us. And if you could also have her slides up. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the introduction, Apoorv, and it's so great to be here. I'm really excited to share some of our work with you. I thought that it would be nice to bring in some more practical examples to accompany Jean's sort of presentation of the bigger concepts. So here's a quick snapshot of some meaningful youth engagement practices in action. Next slide, please. So I'll just quickly share 3 different projects, one from research, one from programs, and one from a learning community, much like this one. The point of this is to show you that meaningful youth engagement is not really like a checkbox that you can tick off, but it really has to be adapted to who your organization is, how your programming is, and what you're doing. So hopefully this will be a nice overview of like many different ways of practicing meaningful youth engagement. Next slide, please. So the first example is from research. And this was a project that Restless Development was doing in partnership with the Danish Representative's Office in Ramallah in 2020. The project was actually convening a youth task team that consisted of 9 young Palestinian people, youth, to be trained on youth-led research methodologies and conduct a youth assessment, essentially. So these 9 young people were co-designing, co-implementing and also co-analyzing data on young people in Palestine, including young people themselves, but also youth serving CBOs and influential policymakers. And all of this data and the research that they were co-analyzing was going to be used to create youth sounding boards. And youth sounding boards was actually a governance body made up of more young people that was going to implement Danita's youth agenda in Palestine. So you see there's many different sort of layers of youth engagement here, but I wanted to highlight some really interesting parts about this partnership that show meaningful youth engagement in practice. So on a very micro level, because this was a research project, we often see young people as givers of data or subjects of data, but in this example, youth were researchers themselves. Young people were interviewing and having focus group discussions with other young people. And in a setting like Palestine, where there's specific sort of contextual importance on conflict, on trauma, on the context of understanding the language, this was really important. And ultimately, we think that having young people lead the research led to much higher quality in the data, addressing issues of power, and also allowing for a lot more sensitivity to be built in or baked into the research process itself. The second thing I wanted to mention was that this is a research project, but young people were not just implementers, they were also designers. So the 9 young people that we worked with, they came from very different backgrounds. And through design meetings, they were the ones that were actually supporting the creation of the tools. So what are the questions? How are they asked? Who are going to be interviewed? Are they going to be focus groups? Are they going to be key informant interviews? So the methodology was actually part of their responsibilities, which requires a lot of trust. And I think that, based on your own experience in youth development, this is a process that I think over time we have to become more accustomed to trusting young people to make decisions that are major to the project. Another thing I wanted to mention was that youth-led research, but connected to real decision-making power. So in this example, the Danita researchers were actually going to be making influential decisions of how Danita's youth agenda in Palestine will be implemented. So everything that these young people were creating was going to inform and shape actual policy investment and development policy. And finally, this program is a really interesting example of how, like Jean had mentioned, that meaningful youth engagement was not an afterthought. It was not something necessarily that was mainstreamed, but it was started from the conception of the program. So quite a lot of, this is quite up in the ladder of participation. Next slide, please. I'll quickly go through a program example of meaningful youth engagement. So Restless Development has been working in Youthled Accountability for gender equality. This was a 3-year program that we supported in India and Tanzania that basically built a network of young people that we called Youthled Advocates and Youth Accountability Advocates. Youth Accountability Advocates worked in their communities to connect gender equality commitments that were made by their national governments attached to SDG 5 and FP 2020. And through advocacy, through research, they were able to mobilize young people in their neighborhoods, in their communities, in their local governance communities, and ultimately support the solution making and programmatic influencing on issues like GBV, SRHR, and gender. And one of the really interesting things about this program is that it's accountability and mobilizing young people around advocacy, but it's done really through mentorship and peer-to-peer support. So one thing that's really important to consider in meaningful youth engagement is that we often think that young people, if you give them the power to sort of to different platforms, that they'll be able to run with it on their feet. But what we often have to do is actually support the mentorship aspect of building youth leadership. And so this program focused a lot on supporting young people's voices and young people kind of laterally also supporting other young people in their communities. And so this like idea of leadership cascading throughout was absolutely critical for building youth power and youth voice. This program also used research in a particular way where we want, with young people conducting research on gender-based violence, on SRHR, and on gender norms in their community, there was an effort to kind of disrupt the idea of who is an expert. Young people themselves who were kind of armed with data were able to use the data and go to their local governments and go to their national governments and sort of advocate and influence empowered by their research. So young people were kind of, changing the culture of like, who is an expert, who is a research, and who has influence. And finally, this program was also conducted during COVID. Part of it was, the last year of it was during the pandemic. And so it had to be really adaptable. And one of the things that's very important to meaningful youth engagement is ensuring that there's an enabling environment. And as many of you know, because of COVID, there was lots of restrictions and limitations that we suddenly faced as a community. So how this program actually had built-in reflection on how can we adapt so that young people can continuously participate in a meaningful way. And one example of that is that in our sort of programmatic meetings, we were seeing that a lot of young people were being pushed off of, were not able to participate because of issues of connectivity and not having digital access. So within our budget, we were trying to create more opportunities to give young people data packs, because that was seen as like directly linked to meaningful participation. If young people are not able to join our meetings, then we've kind of failed as a program. So, running on your feet and assessing what are the limitations and challenges being faced, and then actually adapting your program to make that an enabling environment was something that we learned. Last slide, next slide, please. And I know I'm running out of time, but I'll just do one last example, which is the example of a learning community and how it can practice meaningful youth engagement. So Restless Development is also part of a new partnership. It's a 3-year learning community called the Youth Engagement Network. And it's made up of many different partners focused on reducing teen pregnancy and STIs in the US. And what's interesting about this network and how it practices meaningful youth engagement is that it's very participatory, and it includes multiple young people who are part of the core membership that are also what we would say the target community of the project itself. So one of the things that we have to remember is that, when we say youth is not a monolith. There's many types of youth. And so this program, because it has a very specific focus on SRHR and marginalization and discrimination within the US, the core members of this group are made up of actually LGBT young people, Black men, young women, Black women. So it's very, very reflective of the decision makers in this community of practice are also very much the community that these programs are going to be targeting. There's also built-in participatory mechanisms within this network. So what this learning network will ultimately do is learn from practical examples of SRHR interventions, but also be in charge of a fund that will be supporting partner organizations. So just to briefly explain, what this is going to do is the core members are going to be able to decide how to spend and invest money. So there's a participatory resourcing and grant making aspect of this project that also really empowers young people to decide and influence where this project is going. So participatory budgeting is also something that is a specific tool that more and more people in our sector are adopting, and it would be a great tool in your toolbox to also consider as you go through options for meaningful youth engagement. So I will stop there. I know this was a lot of information, but I hope that it was a little menu of like different opportunities and options, and seeing how different tools and, you know, there's so many ways of sort of tailoring your program to engage more with young people. And it's not one size fit all, but rather a continuous learning process of how to improve participation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nafisa, for that really good presentation. We already have some thoughts and comments and questions in the chat box that I will accumulate for the end. Our next speaker is Inés, who's also a colleague of mine and is a senior youth collective coordinator. She comes from a lot of years of experience, particularly in Latin America. And could we please have Inés's presentation up? She's going to be talking about another model of Youthled Accountability, which is a Youth Power panel. So over to you, Inés.
Thank you very much. It's been really inspiring to hear what everyone is sharing. So yes, I am Inés. I'm originally from Peru, but I've been working in the UK with Restless Development for the past couple of months. And I want to share a bit about the Youth Power panel. So a bit of context here. I was a Youth Power panelist. So the Youth Power panel is a group of 12 young people, and we can probably go to the next slide so that you can see their faces. The work. So I was part of this panel in 2019, 2020, and now I have the privilege to actually work with the panel to help them achieve the global goals. So what we do with this Youth Power panel is basically unite together with all these activists from around the world who are already working in their communities and already working in accountability and leading great projects to help them build a global campaign. So there are people that are in South Africa, Nigeria, Lebanon, Indonesia, Peru, India, Philippines. I could say all the countries, but so that you can see it's really global. And what we really want to do is to show that you, or the Youth Power panel, and 1,000 of their friends raising one voice is something really, really powerful. And I think it's important to note that these young people are already doing something. They're already acting. They're already in their communities. It's not as if they've been brought on and they don't have experience. Regardless of whether they're working, whether they're activists, whatever they're doing, they are taking action in their communities. And I think that's a really important point in accountability. It's that we can take the first step. Accountability also comes through us, and it comes to the experiences we have, whether as young people, participating in different events. And what we do at Restless is give them that space. And as Jean was sharing at the beginning in the ladder of participation, giving youth that space as partners and as leaders, because they can be that. So that's kind of what we do in terms of accountability with the panel. This is something that's convened with Restless Development, Project Everyone, who does the comms for the global goals, and also Action for Sustainable Development, who helped this panel. So that we help them with opportunities to speak at different events. So we can go to the next slide and you can see a bit of what we do with them. It is important also to remember that obviously speaking at different events doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. And I think that's one of the difficulties that we have found, is that many people speak with us, they have interactions. So in the screenshot you can see there, they were speaking with the Ministry of Family and Children of Canada at a UNGA HLPF event. So these are UN events, high-level events with people speaking as authorities from their countries. But unfortunately, after the event, we haven't seen anything come out of that. So how do we ask accountability from people who we have interacted with? How do we make sure those global campaigns actually do create an impact in those communities? There are a lot of promises, but not necessarily policies coming out of that. So that's one of the main struggles in our work, is trying to, on top of being accountable to ourselves, to the communities we work in, how do we make sure other people are also accountable in the promises that they give? So that can be through policies they could implement. It could be through different funds that they may be able to hand out. And that's another campaign that I'll talk to you later about. It doesn't necessarily have to be accountability with policymakers. It can also be with companies. It can be with anyone, really. Everyone should be accountable, right? And we want to make sure that those conversations that we have translate into concrete actions. And how can we do that? By mixing our global campaigns with our local campaigns. So making sure that the local realities are represented in the campaigns that we do. This can be, for example, a campaign that we did for 16 Days of Activism. We wrote a letter for young people in their communities to send to their authorities or to sign themselves or to send to organizations for them to commit to a series of actions to help reduce or eradicate gender-based violence. And this is something that now we need to follow through with. Is that impacting the local realities in different countries? We also gave the opportunity for people that aren't necessarily part of the panel to write blogs about their stories and really shed light on what we were calling the hidden pandemic. So accountability is also making sure that the voices are heard, and not only heard, but then something's happening about them. One of our YouthPower panelists, Ria, she works with people that are that had suffered acid attack, and we had a story about one of these young ladies that suffered acid attack and that is now working with her organization to kind of get back into society, not be shunned. And accountability from our side can mean giving her those spaces to actually access events that she may not have ever been able to attend, to access people, to talk to policymakers and ask for there to be different laws put into place to avoid more people having acid attacks. So making the voices of those who have actually gone through a traumatic experience, make them be the ones that are heard. It doesn't have to be me speaking on their behalf or anyone from the YouthPower panel, but these people can also share their own stories. So a way we can do that, and we can go to the next slide, is making change happen in people's communities. I shared about the letter writing. The way we launched the panel last year was also launching a letter with 2020 young activists signing a letter, letting world leaders know that we were watching them to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And this had a massive impact because it was branded by Project Everyone. So it was supported by the United Nations, and obviously that brings attention to it. But what we can do now is we realize, okay, young people are doing actions. They're taking charge, whether there are policies or not in place. What they need now is funding. So this is where our next project for this year comes in. It's called the YouthPower Hacks. And the YouthPower Hacks are a space for young people to come for 5 hours, brainstorm solutions to the biggest problems in their communities, and then potentially be funded. So this is a project that is being funded by Unilever, and young people. We had our first one last Friday for young people in Kenya, and they came up with brilliant solutions, 8 teams coming up with 8 solutions for gender-based violence or gender issues in general and education. And then we'll have one next Friday for South Africa, where young people will be also brainstorming solutions for education and livelihoods, and so on for the next 3 months, really making sure that young people are coming up with the solutions that are most important to them in their communities, and it's not someone telling them what they should do. So a way we can hold companies accountable is obviously, in a sense, asking for their money. But as I put there, we don't really need to ask people to give us something. First, we can show them what we do. So the way we approached Unilever was saying to them, look, this is what we can bring to you. We have this knowledge of how to do design thinking, how to make young people share the best ideas in their communities. And this can be useful to you for this and this reason. And they just come back to us and say, great, we want to work with you. It doesn't have to be just us asking, because we can bring something to someone else. So that's what the YouthPower Hacks are. If you are in any of the countries our hacks are in, you're welcome to join us. So we had one in Kenya, the next one South Africa, the next one will be Nigeria, then India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And if you aren't in any of those countries, I would encourage you still to join the Youth Power movement. The Youth Power, it's funny because today we have kind of two youth powers, and I love it because there's just youth power everywhere. But Youth Power panel is 12 people, but the Youth Power campaign is anyone. So anyone can be part of the Youth Power campaign. And I would say the first thing to do if you want to ask other people to be accountable is also be accountable to yourself. So be accountable to yourself and where you're spending your time and what you're doing and what campaigns you're supporting, making sure that your skills, your passion, your determination, your imagination for a better world are things that you're actually acting on. And I can assure you that the rest will come and will follow. You can join us. You can see that on the next slide. If you have any questions, you can write to youthpower@restlessdevelopment.org and I will be happy to respond. I think that was almost 10 minutes, so I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Inés. Inés, unfortunately, will not be able to stay till the end, so I will ask her a couple of questions that have come up in the chat box right now. But of course, we have VM who will be speaking in the end. One question, Inés, is how was the Youth Power panel selected, or how is the panel selected? And then there's another comment from Sarah Johnson about, the challenges of tracking system or institutional level changes and how to measure adjusted practices or policies. And then, yes, there is a last question which has just come on what might those of us not youth, that is aged out youth as we call them, assist once the Youth Power hacks to meaningfully engage with the solutions that young people come up with. So 3 questions for you.
Great questions. I think I remember them. So in terms of how the panel is selected, the Youth Power panel is selected by the 3 partners, so Action for Sustainable Development, Restless Development, and Project Everyone. Originally, I wasn't even a part of the selection as I was being selected to be part of the panel, but it was an open call, so anyone could apply, and then they were looking at previous experiences, so people that were already working in communities, if they already had something going on, if they had founded an NGO, if they were part of actions in their communities, anything like that. They were also looking to see a geographical spread. So we have people in basically every continent, not in, we have Asia. We don't have like Australia, or we couldn't really have everywhere in the world, of course, with just 12 people, but basically trying to get a spread in the whole world to actually access communities all over the world. And also gender balance. So in this case right now we have 7 women and 5 men. That was how the original Youth Power panel was selected. It was an overwhelming application process. I heard a lot of brilliant young people that obviously weren't able to be part of the selected 12, but that then have been able to continue in the whole Youth Power campaign. For the second year, because we had COVID last year, and this is probably something everyone talks about, the Youth Power panel wasn't able to do all that they had wanted to in the first year. So we gave them the opportunity to stay on. 9 people did stay on and 3 stepped down, including myself, because I was now managing the panel. And so we were just then looking for 3 specific people in specific countries where people had stepped down. So that was a closed call, just to people who had previously applied, or to people in specific countries. And the criteria was the same, looking for people that were already doing something in their communities. So for example, our new South African Youth Power panelist is the South African Envoy for Youth. So it's looking for people that are already active in their communities and that can help us make the campaign reach even more people. There was a question about what can people that are no longer quote unquote youth, what can they do? Actually, in our Youth Power hacks, we haven't put an age limit, and there are people applying that are 50 years old that can have a lot of knowledge that they can share with young people. And we're really looking at the application, not the age, the gender, or anything until the end of the process. So I would encourage you, if you want to take part, you can. We believe that youth is also a mindset, and helping youth, you can be whatever age you want, if you want to help youth. And also we have mentors, for example, for our YouthPower panelists. So people can apply to be mentors for these young people and give them the knowledge that they have. That's another way you can help. And another way is spreading the word. I'm sure that even if you do not consider yourself youth, you know youth, and you can encourage them to continue to take action in their communities. I cannot remember what the third question was. Apologies.
It was not really a question, it was really about tracking changes in policy level outcomes of such interventions.
Great. Yes. Thank you. So that is, as I said, one of the challenges. We do have contacts. We do work with certain governments. Sometimes we do research with certain governments. And I think Nafisa talked a bit about that. So that's a way to easily track, because we're like directly in contact with them. We cannot do that with all governments. So another way is through our community, with the 2020 people that signed the letters. They have impact in their communities. So we're not necessarily reaching out. We're going through them for them to reach out and them to follow up and giving them opportunities. And of course, sometimes people come to us. People love to have young people talking at their events. And if they come out to us, we can first say, okay, what have you done? We do not want this to be just like, the word greenwashing exists, but like youth washing or whatever you'd call it. Like, we don't want you to just show a young person and not do anything on your side. So what are you doing before we can invite someone into your space? And that's a great way, because people do come out to us and people do say, we want to hear what young people are doing. And we can say in the opposite direction, well, what are you doing for them?
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Inés. So much to take from there. And we really wish you could stay till the end, but thank you so much for the time. And now I'd like to invite our last speaker, Wiem Chamsi, who is from Tunisia and is a youth activist and consultant, and has been working with numerous organizations nationally and internationally to help them advance positive youth development and meaningful youth engagement. But I think before we invite Wiem to speak, there's a little video that she would like to share with all of us. So we are going to start with a 1-minute video.
I am Maria, Lebanon. I am one of 12 young researchers leading a peer-to-peer research project looking into resilience to COVID-19, education and the future of work, and youth voices. We are asking young people in the MENA, Sahel, and East and Horn of Africa, how can we build back better? How they want to be educated, and how their voices can be strengthened and heard in society.
Youth, as a dynamic power of innovation and creation, has been leading the way with outstanding initiatives and solutions during the corona outbreak. Their efforts need to be recognized.
Their insights and knowledge should inform the decisions that affect their lives and the lives of their communities.
So hello everyone, I'm Wiem from Tunisia, and obviously I'm one of the 12 young researchers that you saw in the previous video. So we were selected for the Youth at Heart Youth at Heart Research Fellowship organized by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs in partnership with Restless Development and other partners who participated in the Youth at Heart Virtual Forum held in November 2020. So together we reached out to 1,200 young people across East and Horn of Africa, MENA, and Sahel regions, and in order to craft principal documents summarizing their challenges and their recommendations regarding how to build back better society with COVID, how to shape better educational system and provide decent work for young people, and how to enhance their voices in society. So we spoke to them, and this is what they said. First of all, the educational system doesn't prepare them enough for the job markets because the curricula doesn't reflect the realities on the ground. And the sudden shift to virtual learning wasn't neither adequate or accessible to everyone. And this is how we came up with the first principle, so which is about how to build a more relevant, sustainable, and effective enabling environment for education and work system for young people that recognize their rights and way. So, in fact, young people are calling the private sectors, governments, NGOs leaders, and decision makers, including young people, to prioritize access to quality education as a means for social justice. Second, to recognize their rights and will to access suitable learning opportunities that respond to the changing job markets and the modern needs by building better, effective educational system and work systems that ensure their employability by providing them with the key skills, digital skills, soft skills, and entrepreneurship, and make sure and emphasize for regarding their responsibility for the creation of decent work for young people through providing them with the right opportunities and meaningful opportunities like paid internship, mentorship, and equal opportunity to access funding for young entrepreneurs. So obviously we are in the middle of a global learning crisis where this digital learning should be an essential service. And the world is off track of meeting its 2030 educational commitment by 2030. And I'm sure if we work together, we can shape better quality education and build back better society for all of us. Moving on, so the second principle is about involving young people at all levels of decision-making process that affect their lives. And all the previous speakers were talking about youth advocacy and how important to involve young people. So actually youth voice is important. The more we talk to youth, the better insights we get. And the power of this younger generation is that we don't need someone's voice. Everybody has their own meaningful voice to contribute to the change agenda. And I still remember from the Youth at Heart virtual forum that quote, we young people, we don't want the keys, we want the doors. In fact, it has no sense to create policies, youth policies, make decisions for their lives without meaningfully engage young people in the process, because the answers for the challenges that young people are facing definitely will come from young people. Therefore, we need to put youth at the heart of decision and actions and provide them with better support to meaningfully engage them and shift power to them. And that's why youth want to create more inclusive platforms. Sorry, I'm seeing that. I hope everyone are able to hear me well, because I'm seeing okay. So young people are calling to creating more inclusive platforms and shared safe spaces, both digital and physical, to inform policies and programs that impact our lives, which should be integrated in the process. And they are calling to invest in more youth-led initiatives and programs, such like the youth research-led initiatives that are working to promote more accountable, responsive, and effective governance at both the local and the national level. And the third, to partner with young people as leaders and as experts as well at all levels to ensure accountability. Moving on, so the third principle, which is the final one, is to partner with young people to build a better and more resilient world for all generations. So youth were obviously leading the front line against COVID everywhere in the world by either volunteering or by innovating solutions to support the recovery efforts of the government and the community. Yet they were not that valued, not that included, which is shame. So thus, young people want decision makers and governments to value and involve young people's knowledge and insights to inform crisis responses recovery efforts at all levels. Second, to partner with youth, trust them to participate and lead responses for the recovery effort by providing them with needed resources and skills. Third, to invest in youth-led initiatives that are in forefront of COVID-19 responses, especially organizations that are supporting young people who are coming from the most marginalized and vulnerable groups. And fourth, to recognize the negative effects of COVID-19 on young people's well-being and mental health and provide them with the needed support, which is was highly mentioned along the research, because mental health is not really that spoken, especially in those regions of where we made the research. And so finally, my last message is the following. Youth leadership is happening now, not in the future. And we need you to take part in it by supporting us, playing our roles, taking and making meaningful actions as problem solver, as decision solver at all levels, in all sectors that impact our lives. whatever in building our resilience to COVID, shaping better educational system to have more adequate opportunity for decent work, or amplifying and enhances our voice in society. Young people must have their voices heard all the time. We cannot be passive participants in conversation about our future. We should be active about creating our own future in the way that we want to. And that's why I took part in the Youth at Heart adventure in the first place. So I'm inviting you to travel this path together, all of us, like government, private sector, NGOs leaders, young people as well, to explore our power in action. It's our time, and this is our call. So thank you so much for the attention, and I will make sure to link you a link for our principal document in the chat, and looking forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you so much for having me.
That was great. Thank you so much, Wiem. I would now ask everyone to please post questions in the chat box. I have two here that I'm going to start with. The first one came from Sarah Johnson during Nafisa's presentation. She says, "This is really fabulous. I liked the note about adequate and meaningful youth mentorship, and was curious to hear how was that assessed in terms of degree type, etc." So that one is for you, really, I think, Nafisa. And then there's another one from Alicia, which is, what are the ways to institutionalize meaningful youth engagement? And there's a second one from Alicia, which is, how do we ensure diverse youth voices among those young people who sit at the table, as young people are not a homogeneous group? I think the one on institutionalizing meaningful youth engagement, I could safely give it to Eugene, and you can handle both of these. Wiem, of course, is with us, and so are Jean and Nafisa. So please feel free to post more questions in the chat box, but I will start with these two for now. So maybe Nafisa, you can take the first one, and then Jean.
Sure. Great question. Thanks so much for asking. I think it's interesting when we were talking about about accountability and how this is attached to mentorship. When we're actually currently in the end-line evaluation phase for the project that I mentioned that's built on the multiple mentorship models. So very shortly, we'll be able to share publicly some of our quantified findings and on impact. But connected to this question is, ultimately, when we're when young people are doing these projects on influencing and advocacy, that mentorship process is certainly helping us in our end line in terms of the impact that they're creating in their communities, but also the impact and transformation happening on the level of leadership. So that's something that we've made sure to sort of include in our evaluation, because we see, the importance of sort of building youth power and youth voice as necessary in, understanding what youth accountability and youth advocacy looks like. So, yeah, I think we're going to be excited to sort of share out those products shortly, but also very purposefully designing programs that are able to build in evaluations and self-assessment, because oftentimes these things are not necessarily quantifiable in the ways that donors would want, but it's also about how young people perceive the change within themselves, and really accommodating for this in our measurements.
Great, thank you so much, Nafisa. And one thing I wanted to share was, as part of all the sharing of practices and best practices and learnings that we will be doing, as soon as this is public, we will of course share it in the discussion group on the youthpower.org website. So please do not forget to register yourself on the youthpower.org website and join the discussion group on youth engagement. I would now like to invite Jean to answer the question about institutionalizing meaningful youth engagement, and also how to really recognize diverse youth in doing that.
Great, I'm happy to share some thoughts, but I think other panelists also would love to hear what they think. I think it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think Nafisa mentioned that in hers too. So it will look different for every organization and institution. I think, we as a community of practice and others who work on this can come up with frameworks and principles, but it really then has to be designed into your own organization. And so, one way to do that is doing a youth audit or an assessment of, what's worked, what hasn't, what are the barriers for your particular organization, and bringing young people, into that assessment process and putting forward recommendations based on the principles that have been developed and shared and what's worked for others. So I think it's, there's no quick wins, on that. I think it's really looking at that really intentional view of it, really doing that assessment as a starting place and then building what works for your institution or your organization. And then I think as a community of practice, it's that sharing and learning, the sharing success stories. Like, I'd love to see us being really open about challenges and barriers, and then working together to come up with solutions. And I think, I think there's still a priority that we have to put on it. That, I think I've seen things come really far, over the last decade, but I'm also hopeful in this moment as we also look at systemic racism and historic inequalities in the world, that we're also really looking at international development, and really changing the ways that we work and bringing that in, and certainly engaging young people, engaging communities is key to that, and how we're thinking about restoring power. So I think drawing on the movement and the reckoning that's happening to also think about institutionalizing meaningful youth engagement is key.
Thank you. And there's another comment from Usha about it would be useful to identify concrete evidence-based tools to measure our progress on youth participation. So Jean, Wiem, Nafisa, if you want to share any thoughts on that. Or on the other questions, so yeah.
Yeah, I might mention just some interesting work that Restless is doing. I absolutely agree and echo that there should be more of an evidence base for this type of work. And, we see sort of like a gap in terms of our knowledge as a sector sometimes in this. There's, I mean, and it's so broad too, like what does it look like in SRHR programs? What does it look like in humanitarian instances? I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to generate that kind of knowledge. And one thing that Restless has recently done is with our work in Sierra Leone around the Ebola crisis, we have been working more with institutional partners in academia to generate knowledge on how community engagement with youth engagement in humanitarian crises has directly improved health outcomes. So this is sort of a project that's parallel to our programming, but to make sure that our learning and evidence generation is also something part of our mandate for work. And I think YP2LE is a great example of, a learning community that's also emphasizing this, so that we're not just sort of always worried about our programmatic outcomes, but also generating knowledge and connecting with academia. I think it would be great actually, Apoorv, if we can share some of our work that we published on Ebola as well. It's not directly connected to this, but linked to it. It was, we published last year in the Lancet, actually.
Yeah, great. I think it'll be great to share some of these resources on the discussion group. I know we are running a bit a little late on time, but of course we did want to have a 1.5-hour session and not just a 1-hour session. So we'd like everyone to stick around to also see the last part of the discussion, which is very exciting, where we'll be sharing with you our plans for the coming month. There is a follow-up comment from Usha about how do we try to identify and use specific set of measures and tools to learn and build the evidence. I think, Usha, this is a really good comment, and I think we can take this up as part of the discussion group on the YouthPower platform, which you're a part of. And I'm sure there are a lot of existing tools on the platform that you can also refer to. And this could be probably another discussion point for us going forward. So thank you so much. I would now hand over to Balkis to kind of take us through the final part of our webinar today, which is very exciting. So please do stick around. We will only take 15 minutes more of your time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Apurva. Thank you to all of our speakers and presenters today. So now, Apurva and I have been thinking of a way of making sure that, you know, we're aware of our schedules ahead of time, especially when it comes to these meetings. And so we wanted to suggest a poll for everyone here and everyone part of the COP. And we thought about having our monthly, you know, these monthly calls or webinars, either the second or the third Thursday of every month. And so that is what our poll is going to be about. You'll see it in the screen now. And we want you to choose whether you want to meet the second Thursday of every month, the third Thursday of every month. Either option works for you or neither of them works for you. And that will help us in setting an agenda and helping you also, you know, have that sort of time slot saved for these calls every month. So please keep your answers coming. I think we still have about 30 seconds and we'll wait for everyone to respond. It's okay if you need like a second or so to take over, to look at actually your calendar to make sure that you're available. So the more responses we have, the better it is. Okay, so we're having a lot of either option works for them, which means we'll probably just need to select either the second or the third, but that's good because that means there is a flexibility in there. Okay, so yeah, I think, yeah, we can end the poll here. So a lot of people said either option works for them, which is great, of course. I think we'll just have to choose and we'll let everyone know about our final, you know, decision in the platform, in the COP platform. So keep an eye on that. We'll probably post when we'll be having these monthly discussions anytime next week. So please check it to know when our next meeting is going to be. Another thing we also wanted to do before we end our call, as we said at the beginning, we are going to have a joint event in March with our gender COP celebrating International Women's Day. And so in the chat, we're going to post a Padlet link where we're going to ask for your comments and your thoughts about how you think or what you think is the best way to celebrate International Women's Day. And we will also give you a couple of seconds to add your thoughts in there. But one thing I wanted to say is that you can keep adding your ideas even after the call ends. And so Apurva and I will take a look at it early next week to see what you all think. So even, you know, if you're unable to do it now, or you just feel like you don't have any idea that is clear, or you want to think about it, just a heads up for you that we'll be taking a look at it and that you can also actually add to it even after the call ends. So keep all of your creative ideas and would be really happy to go over them. Okay, so you can either add a comment under how should we commemorate International Women's Day, or you can add just a separate one. I mean, as you wish, really, we don't mind. So, all right, we have a couple of things coming in. Great. Apurv, do you want to maybe read them? Because I'm not seeing the screen clearly. Right.
Yeah, I think this is great. We're just going to spend only a couple of minutes on this before we do the final part. So I can see there's some reflections on living gender equity every day, breaking down the systems of power, looking at intersectionality, of course, hear about inspiring young women globally who are tackling SDGs, talk about how we engage young women with an intersectional approach. There was a comment earlier in the chat box about engaging men and boys. I can see another one on intergenerational reflections, mentorship, economic status, and earning power. I think these are some really good suggestions to already work with. And I think we've got our gender COP champion here as well in the meeting. So we're going to share with Heather and her co-facilitator. And the link is active throughout, like for the next 1 week or so. So please keep adding your suggestions here. As Balkis had said earlier, we are of course open to hearing from some of you if you want to share some of your best practices, because all of you are experts, all 50 of you present on this call. So if anybody wants to share their ideas, please feel free to reach out to me or Balkis. The amazing youthpower.org platform has a feature to message people directly as well. So you can message us on the platform or just comment on the thread that is already existing. Um,
Yeah, thank you, Apoorv. So like you said, the link is active, and so you can keep adding your ideas, and we'd really love that because as we discussed at the beginning, this is very members driven, and so we depend on you to actually form and work on these, on these ideas and webinars and workshops. And one last thing is to go back to the presentation that we started with at the beginning to actually walk you through the website and platform functionality. So if we can have that up, that would be great. Great. Okay. So as you see in the next slide, we want to take just a minute quickly to remind you guys of everything that you can do throughout the platform. And the platform is really our workplace, and it is somewhere, it is the place where we are all gathered and where we can all communicate. Starting with notifications. So any user who's registered on the youthpower.org website, they receive regular email notifications. Usually the default is weekly, but you can actually change that to either daily or every 2 weeks. And we're going to create a video tutorial soon, and we'll send it to all of you and also post it in the discussion thread. And you can take a look at it to understand how you can change and manage these notifications. Also, to keep in mind that you get, there are two types of notifications. One is about new content on the website, and that is based on your preferences. So when you created your account, you probably chose a couple of things that as preferences for your sector, topic, what you do, why you're interested in hearing about, etc. So you'll get notifications based on that. And then also the new discussion threads for the group that you have joined. So for example, if you've joined our COP, then whenever we post, you should get an email that tells you there is a new posting, and that way you can stay updated on what we're posting in that thread, the discussion thread. So in the next slide, this is basically to tell you that you can see group members and you can also message them. So all you need to do is that you actually go to the page itself, and then under members, you'll be able to see who is there, a couple of specific information about them, but it will be great because it will show you how many people are in your COP, what do they do, where do they come from, their sectors, etc. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, how basically about posting a new discussion thread. This is very easy. All you need to do is that you should go to add discussion forum, and then add a new discussion, and then under that you can add like a title, the text, you can post an image, upload an attachment, a link to a video, whatever it is, you'll be able to add it there. I think you can also choose whether it is an announcement, it's a reminder, whatever you want to put in there, it will categorize it that way, so that way we can have it more organized. And so this is very easy. It's really simple, straightforward on our platform. In the next slide, there's the format content. This is, basically the regular things that we know about, like the options that are available when you want to post. They're similar to anything that is on Word doc. So you have the flexibility in there in choosing what type of content, how do you want it to look like when you post it. And then we just wanted to end in the next slide with the YP2LE social media channels. You can tag us in there. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook. So the both at the beginning, Twitter and Facebook, those are for YouthPower Learning, and then you have Youthled Global. So both of them are present throughout social media, and you can take a look there as well, or tag us if you post anything that is specific to that. I think this is it. These are the major things we wanted to remind you of, really. As we said, the platform is really essential because it will be our main essential channel through which we communicate. And like Apoorv and I've been saying from the beginning, we rely on you to be able to create this kind of engagement. And so we need you, we need to hear from you so that we can give back. So please, as a reminder, we have already posted the charter. So go take a look at it. Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd be happy to edit it together. And just, keep an eye on your emails because you'll always be receiving notifications through email. We'll also send you a video tutorial on how to adjust that. You can, one thing I personally do whenever I join a new platform is that I actually log in and try to experiment and just go, to different sections and try to understand how does it work and what does it have. And as you can message us, which is a great new thing that you can do, you can send a message to the members in the COP, including Apoorv and I. So if you have questions or concerns or anything you don't understand or want to say, you can definitely send us a direct message and we'll be able to assist you with that. Great, thank you so much, everyone. We'll make sure to post this and in our COP in the chat so that you can have a copy of it. And this is it on my end. Thank you so much for joining our call today. It's been really great to see all of you and hear from you. And I'll leave it to Apoorv to say any final words.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I cannot say this enough. I am seeing a lot of you, but you all need to register on the youthpower.org platform. So cannot stress the importance of doing that enough. So please go right after this call on youthpower.org and register your profile so that we can stay connected beyond these monthly events. And if you have any questions, any concerns, please feel free to message me or Balkis or post on the platform. We're always available. And we will look forward to seeing all of you on the next meeting on the 2nd or the 3rd week of March, a Thursday, which it is, as we have already decided. And it's going to be a joint event with our gender community of practice, focusing on women and girls. And I think we can close it off here. Thank you so much for your time and patience and staying for 1.5 hours with us.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.